Hi, I just wanted to give you just a few tips in regards to giving or communicating with parents, particularly in parent interviews. I think the first thing that is really, really important is that the first time that you talk with one of your students' parents, particularly in like a student-teacher conference or just a parent-teacher conference, make sure that there's no surprises. If their child is having some issues or is behind or hasn't been handing in homework, they shouldn't hear it for the first time in this meeting. So make sure that you establish ways to communicate with parents beforehand, because there really should be no surprises when they come um, to the actual meeting. I mean, they may have read the report, but even then the report shouldn't be like, what, because for me, even as a parent, I think, if my child hasn't been handing in homework and I find out, at the end of the first semester, I would have preferred to be on that beforehand. So just make sure that you are communicating and so that there's really no surprises. The other thing is to focus on the student's skills, not their character. Now, this comes from my own kind of experience with having a neighbor who was really upset because the teacher had mentioned about how their child wasn't funny or was a bit lazy. And these sorts of things, because it's more based on character, will really offend parents. Now, we will have students that do have these tendencies, and their behavior is not something that we want to ignore. However, we really need to discuss their behavior in light of things like the capabilities and so on. So really focusing on kind of evidence of their work. So, they don't turn in homework. Instead of saying they're lazy, they don't do it. Or they cannot, don't have sustained kind of concentration. These sorts of things that are a bit more about skills and a bit more of evidence that you've observed rather than just having an attack on their character. So this is a really important thing, is to put it into that kind of go into teacher mode, really focus on how these skills or these processes are affecting their learning, not so much on their character. Because as soon as you kind of talk about character, parents will get really defensive. So really talk about it in regards to things you've observed. And that goes to the idea that having evidence. So making sure that you talk about the evidence and you focus on the evidence of the artifacts rather than just kind of general thoughts about the student's learning. So, have actual work with you that you will discuss and provide kind of some key things. And that goes on to my next point, is that really for each kind of parent teacher conference, you should maybe focus on 2 or 3 key things. You don't need to tell them everything, but focus on kind of, as the media does. The media kind of identifies some key salient or important issues, and then they focus on that. So decide what your 2 or 3 messages that you want to communicate to the parents about the student's learning, and focus on that. Provide evidence and talk to the evidence and to the actual student work rather than kind of generally speaking about the student. And one of the most important things is make sure you know your school's policies in regards to homework. Make sure you know the school's policy around assessment. Those policies, those school policies, are really, really important, so that you can also communicate those as a school policy rather than your own policies. Because sometimes parents think that teachers are just kind of making it up as they go, which usually is not the case. But back up yourself using those policies. The final thing that I want to mention is that there are teachers there that probably have dealt with some of these parents and or students. So if they're, particularly in your first few years of teaching, if there is a student that you're having some problems with or having concerns, this is where kind of that collegial spirit needs to come in, and make sure that you talk with other teachers, because they may have dealt with the parents before. They actually know how they respond. Different parents respond differently. For me, I actually want to know exactly what's happening with my children, and I'm not going to make excuses for them. And I would rather someone be really just brutally honest with me. Other parents may not respond that way. So it's knowing who the parents are. So using that collective nature, that collective spirit, to be able to kind of find out what's actually been, how a parent has responded, and so on. So these are just some general tips that hopefully will help you not only thinking through your second assignment, but as you begin your teaching career. Okay, bye.